Minister Charles Ramson, other participants and delegates. Let me first of all say I have the onerous task of keeping those of you in this room awake. And I'm quite sure it's always difficult to be speaking after lunch, especially I'm quite sure we've all had a hearty lunch. But given the importance of the topic here, which I'm about to speak on, I think it's important to have a bit of reflection as to how is it, and you would have heard from the various presentation, how is it Guyana got to where it is today in terms of the development of our hydrocarbons, as we all say, also the oil and gas sector. And as pointed out by the MC, I served as Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment from 2011 to 2015. And it was during that period that we had significant events and developments that would have led us to where we are here today. And we've had also some very serious challenges along the way that allowed us to where we are here today. And I want to point to a couple of those events and a couple of those challenges, as well as those opportunities, to give us the context, because we did not get here by accident. We did not get here by just sheer luck, but we got here by vision, by a determination, and a government then, as a government that we have in place today, that is firmly committed in the development of our people, but also in the realization of our vast potential in nearly every sector, and certainly in all sectors of our country. And let me point to a couple of those events. First of all, during the period, say from 2011 to 2014, the Guyana offshore basin was considered to be very high risk. And in fact, we had difficulties in attracting any exploration company in any numbers as such. We had Exxon there, and that agreement was signed under the leadership of then President Janet Jagan. And for a number of years, we've had dormancy, as it were, on that particular basin. And then after 2011, the government then, and the cabinet then, decided that we had to be a bit more active. One, in ensuring that those who held prospecting licenses, that they became much more focused on conducting the activities based on the plans and the programs that they would have supplied to the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, that is the regulatory agency for oil and gas. And so there was that intensified effort that saw us, one, we had CGX effort in 2012. We had Repsol too, and that's around the same period, and both of them came up with Duster Wells. And then we continued to be much more active and engaging the players out there. And then we had some seismic work being undertaken. And then there was another event too, whereby around October 2013, we had the issue whereby Venezuela detained the Technic Perdana seismic vessel that was conducting seismic activities in the area which we call Area A, and that area being held by Anadarko, a US company. But there were not people who were lining up and as it were showing great interest. And there were a few companies, and we had the policy as the Vice President referred to yesterday, and as well as the President in a general way, where we had the policy where first come, first serve in terms of being able to attract and attain prospecting licenses in that regard. And so that period, as it were, was very, very challenging, especially after we had the detention of that particular vessel by the Venezuelan authorities. I say that in the context that our activities then were focused, one, in not only the realization of our hydrocarbons, which was the primary goal, but more so that we had to ensure that our territorial integrity and sovereignty was intact. And how do you do that? Is that you ensure that you do not, as it were, surrender territory, or as it were, you do not leave your territory unoccupied and your resources not being pursued in any way, given the dynamics that we had with the controversy with Venezuela at that time. And we need to understand that context and to also to commend all those who stood with us and those who took the risk, as companies did, that led us to the point whereby Exxon itself, notwithstanding the October 2013 event and the high risk then of the Guyana offshore basin, they went ahead with their exploration program. And that before, just on the eve of the elections in May of 2015, we had that commercial discovery by Exxon. So I wanted to situate and give you that context. But we all know that we can't, or that our eyes are not at the back of our head, but rather in front. And we have to look ahead. And in looking ahead, there are many aspects that we have undertaken as a government in terms of how do we ensure that we have a first and a world-class oil and gas sector, in terms of the regulatory mechanism, both in terms of how the sector operates, but also how it is that the resources that from the sector, how those are spent, how those are utilized to the benefit of the wider population. And so many of those elements you would have been exposed to yesterday, one by the president's vision, the vice president. This morning, we've had the Minister of Natural Resources speaking to that. So I would not refer to that. And I will move straight into how it is do we see the global Guyanese diaspora supplementing, contributing, and ensuring that we build this robust first and world-class oil and gas sector. Firstly, it is important to note, as was pointed out, that based on the latest data that we have more we're talking about Trinidad and Tobago, we're talking about Venezuela, Guyana, and we can go further afield. So we have this huge population out there that possess not only skills, but also possess in terms of resources, financial and otherwise. But a very third important element is their ability to network and mobilize and to use, as it were, their contacts so that we can expedite and accelerate development in our country. And so what we have done at the level of the government is that we've made the diaspora in terms of engagement and attracting the diaspora and involving the diaspora a priority as part of our foreign policy. And that is why today, just as we see from the passage of the 2022 budget, we have a dedicated allocation in that budget to facilitate the work in terms of diaspora engagement and diaspora involvement in many aspects. And there are a couple of areas that we have given much priority to. And there is a detailed presentation I've done, and that will be made available to you. So I'm just going to try to summarize in the interest of time, but I'm quite sure the organizers will make that presentation available to those of you who are here and those who even are not here. But what we have done is that we have prioritized a number of areas. One, in terms of educating and informing the diaspora as to what is taking place in our country, because we want them to be aware. Secondly, we have looked at creating mechanisms, how it is that they can be involved, how it is they can be engaged, how it is that they can play a part of what is taking place. A third component is that we see the diaspora as an element of what we call local content participation. Given our emphasis, given the law that we passed in December 2021 in the Local Content Act, we see the diaspora as being a contributor or supporting in terms of the realization or ensuring that act brings about benefit to our people. Sector, but mainly oil. in this regard for a number of years. We have thousands of persons who live in Trinidad and Tobago, which had a mature oil and gas sector. We have thousands who lived in Venezuela, who are still living in Venezuela, in a country which I don't have to speak about in terms of their experience and their capacity in oil and gas. And we can go further afield, the United States, Canada, Europe, Africa, where we have Guyanese living there, where we've had a mature oil and gas sector. And we've looked at how it is that we can create the mechanisms as well as the incentives to attract and to ensure that they too play a part. And one of those that we've looked at, in addition to the regular, as it were, engagement, reaching out, and as it were, creating mechanisms as to how it is that they can know what's taking place in our country, and particularly in this sector, is to develop, as it were, a platform whereby they will know what the opportunities are and how it is that they can contribute, how it is that they can participate. And we're doing that jointly with both the public and private sector. And we are supporting private initiatives. Take, for instance, there are recruitment companies that are operating even in neighboring states here, who are going out seeking Guyanese to fill the many vacancies in the oil and gas sector as exist in other sectors of our economy. And they've started that process. And we will be extending that platform to other areas where Guyanese reside. And that's one example. The second example too is, and we have several persons in this room and perhaps in the conference at large, whereby members of the diaspora have taken the initiative of looking at where it is there are opportunities created directly and indirectly by the oil and gas sector, and have started investment, one of which is in real estate. Secondly, they've looked in terms of logistics and supply to the industry. We have the other area in terms of food production, whereby members of the diaspora of the last 12 months have returned and have started to invest. Fourthly, they've looked at how it is that they can create JVs with companies from where they would have been domiciled for a number of years. And so those are just several examples how the diaspora have started that process and have been seeking to utilize those mechanisms. The other element is looking at how it is that we can create incentives. But there's always the feeling that once we create incentives for members of the diaspora, that some members of our local community believe that that is a disadvantage to them, or that we are giving special privileges to members of the diaspora so as to have them return or have their investments in our country. But that is not the case. Whatever investment regime that we have is available to both the local population as well as to Guyanese living abroad. But we seek to calibrate those in a way that it makes it not only economically viable and financially viable for them to return, but also to look at the social and other elements of it so that persons would want to come back to Guyana, but not only come back to Guyana, but also to repatriate whatever resources, financial and otherwise. And we're doing that in a way that it does not create an uneven playing field for persons here. Another element too that we've sought to enhance our work is how it is that we can get the second and third generation of Guyanese in the diaspora. And that is always being a challenge because many of them, one, they have not returned for a number of years. Secondly, they have developed skills and businesses and are living as, relatively comfortably out there and feel very much attached to where they are. So it is in a form of uprooting them and bringing them to a different place. And we have been looking at creative ways of targeting the second and third generation. And I'm happy the Minister of Youth is here because we've started a project working with his ministry whereby we are going after that, as it were, that cohort of the diaspora, the second and third generation, and developing, as it were, a youth volunteer program, similar to what those of you who are familiar with the United States, there's the Peace Corps and there's also a volunteer corps in other places. We're trying to develop those to get that cohort of the diaspora back to give up their skills, to give up their time, and indirectly getting them to be aware, to be familiar, and to understand better what is taking place in the country so that they too can come and play a part in what is taking place because they have skills. They will bring new ideas. They'll bring innovation. They'll bring the types of technologies as is so necessary. And another dimension too, and another area also that we've been placing emphasis, and we've looked at the example of Ireland and as to how it is that they've utilized and been able to galvanize and marshal their diaspora in terms of supporting their economic development. And what they've done is they've not targeted the money. They've not targeted the issue of persons remigrating, and as we are doing, and we've just reintroduced the progressive remigration scheme that we had prior to 2015, that was unwisely changed to make it much more less attractive to persons to return. That happened after 2015, but we are now going back to that earliest scheme. But what the Irish have done is that they have looked at where their people work and live and have sought to tap into the network that the diaspora has, be it in terms of businesses, be it in terms of skill, be it in terms of capital. And they have encouraged their diaspora to mobilize that network. And that is why at one time, Ireland became, particularly in Dublin, became the destination for many headquarters of big companies. And that came about solely because of the work of the Irish diaspora in many parts of the world, where companies relocated their headquarters in Ireland because of the incentives and because it was an attractive place to be. And that is the type of approach to, and that is also one of the planks in which we are working on to get the diaspora involved and to utilize and to tap their skill. Another element I want to refer to is that we've seen, and I think someone referred to this, is that the negativity that exists, the pessimism, or as some may say, the alliance against development. We have some of them right here, not only the diaspora, whereby everything that is being pursued, every project that is being pursued, every initiative that is being pursued, this alliance against development here, they seek to misrepresent, they seek to misconstrue, and they seek to mobilize against it. And many times you can't even understand why, other than their motive of stagnation, of also undermining and derailing development. And we want the diaspora to be a force of positive messaging. We want the diaspora to be also a force of unity. We want the diaspora to be a force of transformation and to engage them and to let them also be a voice whereby they will support, that they too can add to positive messaging, that they too can help explain and help understand what it is that is being done in the country, what is the vision, and what are the different elements that we are pursuing in terms of bringing a better life to our country. And we are putting the emphasis on the diaspora because, as I've said at the beginning, that we see them as an important base, as an important element, as an important ingredient, as an important component in terms of moving our country forward. But not only in the oil and gas sector too, because we, as the president pointed out, we see oil and gas as a catalyst for the development of all sectors, for the development of the entire country. And so whilst we talk about opportunities for the diaspora, we don't want to limit those opportunities to the oil and gas sector. And we are making that absolutely clear, that we want them to come in the fields of be it in services, be it in tourism, be it in the area of manufacturing, as will be so necessary, given that once we're able to address and, as it were, solve our energy constraints as we face, and one of the solutions, or two solutions that we're immediately pursuing, is the gas to energy approach. And I think there's a presentation on that after this, and also hydroelectric. And so we will want them also to utilize their networking and their capacity to allow us to develop a light and as it were, even a middleweight manufacturing and processing sector in our country. So we want the diaspora to be very much front and center to what is taking place in our country. We have set, as it were, the mechanisms. We are looking at creative and new ways in which they too can continue to play an enlarged role. We know that there are some issues that we have to address. We will continue to engage them in many areas so we can have those issues, those constraints addressed. But at the end of the day, and as you can see from the various presentations, and we'll see, that we have a holistic approach to the development and to the transformation of our country, whereby we are looking at all avenues, all areas, all opportunities, so that we can truly realize the potential of this country. And I want to make a special appeal to the diaspora that we have a place for you in all that we are doing, in our vision, in our plan, in our programs, so that we can take Guyana to a place it has never been, a place where it is going today, where there's great prosperity, where there's stability, and where there is opportunities and equity for all. And we want the diaspora to be very much involved and to be very much engaged as part of our government mission. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your attention. And as promised, you will receive that presentation, which outlines very clearly our policies and the various mechanisms that we have outlined and detailed in terms of ensuring that the diaspora, that they too play a part in what's taking place in our great and beautiful country. Thank you very much.